What would you do if your baby was hungry and you only had $3 left? Emily Carter never imagined that question would become her reality. The small apartment was quiet except for the soft cries coming from the secondhand crib beside her bed. Morning sunlight slipped through worn blinds, casting thin stripes across the room. Emily stood in the tiny kitchen, staring at an almost empty can of baby formula. Her hands trembled as she lifted it. One scoop. That was all that remained. She checked again, hoping she had somehow missed more. Nothing. Just a thin layer of powder clinging to the bottom. A knot formed in her chest. Noah's cries grew louder. He was only 8 months old. He didn't understand overdue bills, empty bank accounts, or impossible choices. He only knew he was hungry. Emily carefully mixed the last scoop into a bottle, adding water with the precision of someone handling treasure. The formula swirled into a pale cloud before dissolving. She held the bottle close for a moment, fighting back tears. Then she walked to the crib and lifted Noah into her arms. The little boy immediately reached for the bottle. Relief softened his tiny face as he began to drink. Emily smiled, but the smile lasted only seconds. What happened after this bottle was gone? The question echoed through her mind like a storm she could not escape. She lowered herself onto the couch and opened her banking app. The balance appeared on the screen. $3.17. That was everything. She closed her eyes. Rent was already late. The electric bill sat unopened on the counter. Her refrigerator contained half a carton of milk, a few eggs, and leftovers that would barely last another day. 6 months earlier, life had looked different. She had a steady job. She had plans. She believed hard work would be enough. Then layoffs swept through the company. Her position disappeared. Interviews led nowhere. Savings vanished one bill at a time. Every week became a struggle to stay afloat. Emily glanced down at Noah. He had finished the bottle and fallen asleep against her shoulder. His tiny hand rested on her sweater. Trusting. Safe. Completely unaware of how fragile their situation had become. A tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly. No matter how difficult life became, she refused to let him see her break. Hours passed. She searched job listings, filled out applications, refreshed her email. Nothing. Silence. Rejection. More silence. As evening approached, anxiety settled heavily over the apartment. She checked the formula container one last time, even though she already knew it was empty. Then she picked up her phone. Her contact list looked painfully short. Most friends were struggling themselves. Family support was limited. Pride had stopped her from asking for help before. Tonight, pride no longer mattered. Noah needed food. Taking a shaky breath, Emily opened a message window. Her fingers hovered above the screen. She typed a single sentence, unaware that one message, sent in desperation, was about to change her life forever. Emily stared at the message on her screen for nearly a minute before finding the courage to send it. Her thumb hovered over the button. Pride told her to stop. Fear told her she had no choice. Noah needed formula. Nothing else mattered. Finally, she closed her eyes and pressed send. The message disappeared. A wave of embarrassment hit her instantly. $40 was not a fortune, yet asking for it felt heavier than anything she had ever done. She placed her phone face down on the couch and wrapped her arms around herself. The apartment felt colder than usual. Outside, traffic drifted through the evening air. Inside, silence settled over the room. Noah slept peacefully in his crib, unaware that his mother was trying to solve a problem that seemed impossible. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Emily picked up her phone. No response. She checked the message again. That was when her stomach dropped. The name at the top of the screen was wrong. Completely wrong. She had not sent the text to her former coworker. She had sent it to an unknown number. For a second, she could not breathe. Her face turned red with humiliation. Of all the mistakes she could have made, this one felt unbearable. A stranger somewhere had just received a desperate message about her empty bank account and hungry baby. She quickly typed an apology. Then she stopped. What was the point? Whoever received it would probably ignore it. Maybe they had already deleted it. Maybe they were laughing about it. Emily set the phone aside and buried her face in her hands. The little hope she had been holding on to disappeared. Across the city, lights filled the upper floors of a sleek glass tower. Ethan Brooks sat at the head of a conference table overlooking the skyline. Executives discussed projections worth millions of dollars. Charts flashed across giant screens. Numbers filled the room. Yet Ethan barely heard any of it. His phone vibrated once. Normally, he ignored personal messages during meetings. This time he glanced down. One sentence appeared on the screen. "Please, can you lend me $40? My baby needs formula." Ethan stared at the words. Something about them felt painfully real. There was no sales pitch, no manipulation, no elaborate story, just a simple request from someone who sounded completely exhausted. He placed the phone down. The meeting continued. A few moments later, he picked it up again. The message refused to leave his mind. Meanwhile, Emily sat near Noah's crib watching him sleep. The digital clock on the microwave read 9:47 p.m. Tomorrow morning, he would wake up hungry. Tomorrow morning, there would be no formula left. Her chest tightened as she imagined it. Then her phone suddenly lit up. A new message appeared from the unknown number. Emily froze. Her pulse quickened. For several seconds, she could only stare at the screen. Finally, with trembling fingers, she opened the message. What she read next would begin a chain of events neither she nor the stranger on the other side of the conversation could possibly predict. The message contained only a few words. "Are you okay?" Emily read it twice to make sure she had not imagined it. No judgment, no sarcasm, no accusation, just a simple question from a stranger. Her fingers hesitated above the screen. Part of her wanted to ignore it. Another part wanted to tell someone the truth for the first time in months. She swallowed hard and typed a reply. "I am sorry. That message was not meant for you. Please forget I sent it." A response arrived less than a minute later. "I could do that, but I would rather know if your baby is okay." Emily stared at the words. Something about them felt genuine. She looked across the room at Noah sleeping peacefully in his crib. For a moment, the loneliness that had followed her for months felt slightly less overwhelming. She answered honestly, "He is okay tonight. Tomorrow is what worries me." On the other side of the city, Ethan Brooks leaned back in his chair after everyone had left the conference room. The skyline glowed beyond the windows. Normally, his evenings were packed with calls, reports, and meetings. Tonight, his attention remained fixed on a conversation with someone he had never met. He read her message again. "Tomorrow is what worries me." The sentence lingered in his mind. It reminded him of memories he rarely allowed himself to revisit. Long before private jets and executive boardrooms, his mother had worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table. There had been nights when uncertainty sat heavily in their small apartment. He remembered hearing worry in her voice even when she tried to hide it. That feeling never completely left him. Ethan typed carefully, "Do you have family nearby who can help?" Emily looked down at the question. A bitter smile crossed her face. If only it were that simple. She explained that her parents had passed away years earlier. Most relatives lived far away. A few struggled financially themselves. Asking them for help would solve nothing. Minutes passed as the conversation continued. Neither shared many details. Neither revealed much about themselves. Yet somehow the exchange felt easier than expected. There was comfort in talking to someone who knew nothing about her failures, disappointments, or mistakes. Ethan learned that Emily had spent months searching for work. He learned that she never complained about herself. Every concern centered on Noah. His food, his health, his future. That stood out to him more than anything else. Eventually the clock pushed past 11. Emily glanced at the time and sighed. She needed sleep. Tomorrow would bring another difficult day. "Thank you for listening," she wrote. Most people would have ignored my message. Ethan looked at the screen for a long moment before replying. Sometimes the smallest messages matter the most. Emily felt an unexpected warmth in her chest. Then she placed her phone on the nightstand and turned off the lamp. Darkness filled the apartment. Within minutes, she drifted into an uneasy sleep. What she did not know was that Ethan remained awake long after midnight. He sat alone in his office, staring at the city lights below. For reasons he could not explain, he could not stop thinking about a young mother, an empty can of formula, and a problem that $40 could solve. Emily woke before sunrise to the sound of Noah stirring in his crib. For a brief moment, she forgot everything. Then reality returned. The formula container on the kitchen counter was empty. Her stomach tightened instantly. She carried Noah into the living room and sat beside the window. Gray morning light filled the apartment. Outside, people hurried toward jobs, coffee shops, and normal lives. Emily watched them while trying to ignore the fear building inside her. Her phone remained silent. No job offers. No new emails. No miracle waiting to appear. She bounced Noah gently in her arms and forced a smile. He responded with a happy laugh that made her heart ache. He trusted her completely. Somehow she had to find a way through another day. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Emily froze. She was not expecting anyone. The knock came again. Curious, she walked toward the entrance and looked through the peephole. No one was there. Confused, she unlocked the door. A large cardboard box sat on the floor outside her apartment. She glanced down both sides of the hallway. Empty. Whoever had left it was already gone. Slowly, she carried the package inside and placed it on the coffee table. Noah watched with wide eyes. Emily noticed a shipping label, but no sender name. Her pulse quickened as she opened the box. The moment the flaps folded back, she covered her mouth. Inside were several containers of baby formula. Beneath them sat packages of diapers, baby wipes, and a few basic groceries. For several seconds, she simply stared. She thought she might be dreaming. Then tears filled her eyes. The pressure she had carried for weeks seemed to crack all at once. Noah reached toward one of the colorful boxes, smiling as if he understood something wonderful had happened. Emily laughed through her tears. She checked the package again. No note. No explanation. Nothing revealed who had sent it. Her first thought was the stranger from last night. Yet that seemed impossible. He did not know her address. At least she did not think he did. She picked up her phone and opened their conversation. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard. Before she could type anything, another notification appeared. A property management alert. Emily braced herself for bad news. Instead, confusion washed across her face. The overdue rent balance displayed on the screen had changed. According to the account, a payment had been made that morning. The amount owed was now zero. Emily blinked repeatedly. That could not be right. She refreshed the page. The balance remained the same. Paid in full. Her heart pounded harder than ever. First the formula, then the diapers, now the rent. None of it made sense. She checked her bank account, expecting to discover some mistake. The balance still showed $3.17. Nothing had changed there. Someone else had done this. Someone she could not see. Across town, Ethan stood near his office window watching the city wake up below. His assistant had already delivered the morning schedule. Meetings filled every hour. Investors expected updates. Reporters wanted interviews. Yet his thoughts drifted elsewhere. He looked down at a report lying on his desk. A simple address appeared at the top of the page. Emily Carter. Ethan remained silent for a long moment before setting the file aside. The mystery had only just begun. For the first time in weeks, Emily did not spend the entire day worrying about how she would feed Noah. The shelves in her small kitchen now held enough formula to last for weeks. Diapers were stacked neatly beside the pantry. The crushing panic that had followed her every waking moment seemed quieter. Not gone, but quieter. Yet one question refused to leave her mind. Who was helping her? Throughout the day, she checked her phone repeatedly. The conversation with the stranger remained open. Several times, she started typing a message. Each attempt ended with her deleting the words. She did not even know where to begin. Finally, late that afternoon, she sent a simple text. I do not know if you had anything to do with what happened today, but thank you for listening last night. A reply arrived several minutes later. Listening is easy. Most people just need someone willing to do it. Emily smiled faintly. There was kindness in that answer. Real kindness. Not the kind people displayed for attention. The kind that appeared quietly when no one was watching. She looked down at Noah playing on a blanket in the living room. He was laughing at a stuffed elephant with one missing ear. Somehow that laugh sounded lighter today. Across town, Ethan sat through another series of meetings. Executives discussed expansion plans. Analysts presented forecasts. Numbers filled the screens surrounding him. Normally, he thrived in that environment. Today, his attention drifted. Every time he looked at a financial report, he found himself thinking about a completely different set of numbers. $3.17. That was what Emily had left to her name. The figure stayed with him. During a short break, his assistant entered the office carrying several documents. Ethan signed them without much thought. Then he glanced toward the file containing information his private team had gathered. Emily Carter, 26 years old, former administrative coordinator, single mother, unemployed for 6 months, no criminal record, no history of fraud, no hidden assets, nothing suspicious, just a woman struggling to survive. Ethan closed the file slowly. Something still felt wrong. He had seen countless hardship cases over the years. This one bothered him more than it should. Later that evening, Emily sat at her small kitchen table reviewing job applications. Her inbox remained painfully empty. Then she noticed something unusual. A new interview invitation appeared from a company she had applied to months earlier. Confused, she opened the email. The hiring manager wanted to speak with her the following week. Emily blinked several times. She had assumed they rejected her long ago. Suddenly, another email arrived. Then another. 2 more companies wanted to schedule interviews. Her hands trembled as she read the messages. It felt impossible. Months of silence had turned into opportunity within a single day. She wanted to celebrate, yet uncertainty remained. Was this coincidence? Was someone helping behind the scenes? She glanced toward her phone. The stranger's name was still unknown. His face remained a mystery, yet his presence seemed woven into everything happening around her. As darkness settled outside her apartment window, Emily whispered a quiet promise to herself. If life was finally giving her a second chance, she would not waste it. What she did not know was that the answers she desperately wanted were buried in a past she had not fully examined, and very soon a woman named Rachel Turner was about to step back into her life. 3 days later, Emily walked into her first interview carrying more hope than she had felt in months. Noah was spending the afternoon with a neighbor who occasionally helped when she had appointments. Before leaving, Emily had kissed his forehead and promised herself she would keep fighting no matter how difficult things became. The interview itself went surprisingly well. The hiring manager seemed genuinely interested in her experience. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt seen as more than a struggling single mother. She felt like a professional again. Yet as she left the building, a familiar voice stopped her cold. "Emily Carter. I almost did not recognize you." Emily turned slowly. Standing near the entrance was Rachel Turner. The sight of her immediately brought back memories Emily had spent months trying to forget. Rachel looked exactly the same. Perfectly styled hair, expensive clothes, the same confident smile that never quite reached her eyes. Rachel had been Emily's direct supervisor at her previous company. Back then, Emily believed hard work would earn respect. Instead, every success seemed to irritate Rachel. Every accomplishment became another reason for criticism. "Rachel," Emily said carefully. Rachel crossed her arms. "I heard you have been looking for work." The words sounded polite. The tone did not. Emily forced herself to remain calm. "I have." Rachel nodded slowly. "That must be difficult." Emily recognized the expression immediately. It was the look Rachel always wore when pretending to be supportive while quietly enjoying someone else's struggle. "I am managing," Emily replied. Rachel smiled. "Of course you are." The conversation lasted less than 2 minutes, yet Emily felt emotionally drained by the time it ended. As Rachel walked away, old doubts resurfaced. She remembered the final months at her previous job, the sudden negative performance reviews, the opportunities that disappeared without explanation, the meetings she was excluded from. At the time, she blamed herself. Now she was no longer sure. Across town, Ethan sat with 2 members of his private research team. A stack of documents rested on the conference table. One investigator pointed towards several pages highlighted in yellow. "We found something unusual regarding her former employer." Ethan listened carefully. The investigator continued. "Emily received excellent evaluations for years. Then shortly before her maternity leave, the records changed dramatically." Ethan frowned. "How dramatically?" Another file slid across the table. The answer was obvious. Positive reports had been replaced with negative assessments. Promotions were blocked. Internal recommendations vanished. The timeline raised serious questions. Ethan studied the documents in silence. "Who approved these changes?" he finally asked. A single name appeared repeatedly throughout the records. "Rachel Turner." Ethan leaned back in his chair. The pieces were beginning to connect. What initially looked like bad luck now appeared far more complicated. Meanwhile, Emily returned home exhausted. Noah greeted her with excited laughter the moment she walked through the door. She scooped him into her arms and held him close. For a few precious minutes, everything else faded away. Then she noticed a new email notification on her phone. Her smile disappeared as she opened it. The message informed her that one of the interviews she had attended was suddenly canceled. No explanation, no apology, just canceled. A chill ran through her. Something felt wrong, very wrong. And somewhere beyond her view, Ethan was already beginning to uncover the reason. Emily spent the next 2 days trying to convince herself that the canceled interview was simply bad luck. Companies changed their minds all the time. Positions disappeared. Budgets shifted. She repeated those explanations over and over, yet a growing part of her no longer believed them. The timing felt too strange. Every time an opportunity appeared, something seemed to push it away. Still, she refused to give up. Noah deserved more than fear and uncertainty. One rainy morning, another email arrived. This one invited her to a second interview with a respected company downtown. Emily nearly cried from relief. She prepared carefully, reviewing notes while Noah napped beside her. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to imagine a future that looked stable. A steady paycheck, a reliable routine, a chance to rebuild. Across the city, Ethan sat inside a private conference room reviewing the latest findings from his investigation team. The evidence was becoming impossible to ignore. Records showed that Rachel Turner had repeatedly interfered with Emily's professional opportunities. Internal emails revealed negative comments that contradicted performance evaluations. References had been altered. Recommendations had quietly disappeared. Several hiring managers had received misleading information after contacting Emily's former employer. Ethan looked at the documents with growing disbelief. This was not a misunderstanding. Someone had intentionally damaged a young mother's career. One investigator placed another file on the table. "There is more," he said. Ethan opened it. Several former employees had filed complaints about Rachel's behavior over the years. Most had gone nowhere. Some people simply left the company rather than fight. Ethan slowly closed the folder. The room fell silent. "Set up a meeting," he said calmly. "I want every relevant department involved." Meanwhile, Emily arrived at her interview, wearing the only professional outfit she still owned. The building lobby gleamed with polished marble and glass. She took a deep breath before stepping inside. The interview exceeded every expectation. The hiring manager seemed impressed. The conversation flowed naturally. By the end, Emily felt hopeful again. As she exited the building, her phone vibrated. A new message from the stranger appeared. "How did the interview go?" Emily smiled despite herself. She still did not know who he was. Yet somehow his messages always arrived at the right moment. "Better than I expected," she replied. "Maybe things are finally changing." Several minutes passed before his response appeared. Sometimes they do. Sometimes people simply need a fair chance. Emily read the words twice. Fair chance. Those two words lingered in her mind. That evening, while she fed Noah dinner, events were unfolding elsewhere. Senior executives gathered inside one of Ethan's corporate offices. Rachel Turner sat confidently among them, unaware of what was coming. She assumed the meeting concerned quarterly performance reviews. Instead, documents began appearing on the conference table one after another. Emails, personnel records, internal communications. Questions followed. Then more questions. Rachel's confidence started to fade. By the time the meeting ended, years of hidden actions were no longer hidden. For the first time, the truth stood fully exposed. And although Emily had no idea it was happening, the obstacle that had haunted her career for months was finally beginning to crumble. The call came 3 days later. Emily was sitting on the floor with Noah, helping him stack colorful plastic blocks, when her phone rang. She almost ignored it. Unknown numbers usually meant telemarketers or automated messages. Something told her to answer anyway. "Hello," she said cautiously. The voice on the other end belonged to the hiring manager she had recently met. Emily listened quietly as he spoke. Then her eyes widened. Then they filled with tears. She had been offered the position. Not a temporary contract. Not a trial period. A full-time role with benefits, flexibility, and opportunities for advancement. For a moment she could not speak. The past several months flashed through her mind. The endless applications. The rejection emails. The sleepless nights. The fear. Somehow, after everything, a door had finally opened. After ending the call, she pulled Noah into her arms and laughed through happy tears. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." That evening, she sent a message to the stranger. "I got the job." A response arrived almost immediately. "That is wonderful news. You earned it." Emily smiled. She had grown surprisingly comfortable talking with him. Their conversations had become part of her daily routine. Yet one mystery remained unsolved. Who was he? She stared at the screen before finally typing the question she had avoided for weeks. "There is something I need to ask." "Who are you?" Several minutes passed. longer than usual. Emily assumed he would ignore the question. Instead, a message appeared. I think it is time we met. Her heart skipped. Meet? The suggestion felt both exciting and intimidating. After a brief exchange, they agreed to meet the following afternoon at a quiet downtown cafe. The next day, Emily arrived early. Nervous energy filled her chest. She checked her reflection in the cafe window more times than she wanted to admit. Noah sat comfortably in his stroller beside her. Customers came and went. Every time the door opened, her attention shifted. Then the room suddenly became quieter. Not because people stopped talking, because several customers seemed to recognize the man who had just entered. Emily looked up. At first she thought she was mistaken. The tall man scanning the room looked familiar. She had seen his face before. Business magazines, online articles, news interviews. Her pulse quickened. No, it could not be. The man smiled gently when their eyes met. Then he walked directly toward her table. Emily stared in complete disbelief. Ethan Brooks stopped beside her and extended his hand. Emily, he asked softly. She could barely process what was happening. The stranger, the messages, the kindness, the support. The person behind all of it stood right in front of her. Not an ordinary man. One of the most successful business leaders in the city. Emily looked from Ethan to Noah and back again. Her mind searched desperately for an explanation. You? She finally whispered. Ethan smiled. I know this is probably a shock. Emily let out a nervous laugh. Shock was not even close to describing it. As she sat there trying to make sense of the impossible, one question echoed louder than all the others. Why would someone like Ethan Brooks care about someone like her? For several seconds, Emily could only stare at Ethan. The cafe around them seemed to disappear. Conversations faded into the background. Even the sound of coffee machines felt distant. None of it made sense. She had imagined dozens of possibilities. A retired teacher, a kind neighbor, maybe another struggling parent who understood what she was going through. Never this. Ethan sat down across from her and offered a calm smile. Noah looked up from his stroller with curiosity. Within moments, the little boy rewarded Ethan with a cheerful grin. That simple reaction eased some of the tension. Emily finally found her voice. Why? She asked softly. Why would you help me? Ethan looked down for a moment before answering. Because years ago, my mother was in a situation that felt very similar. Emily listened quietly. Ethan explained how his mother had worked tirelessly to support him when he was young. There were difficult months, uncertain months, moments when one small act of kindness made all the difference. Someone helped us when they did not have to, Ethan said. I never forgot it. Emily felt tears gathering again. For weeks, she had searched for answers. The truth turned out to be far simpler than she expected. Compassion. Nothing more. Nothing less. They talked for nearly 2 hours. Not about money. Not about business. They spoke about family, responsibility, dreams, and the strange ways life could change without warning. For the first time in a very long while, Emily felt completely understood. Before leaving, Ethan handed her a small envelope. What is this? She asked. Open it later, he replied with a smile. That evening, after Noah fell asleep, Emily finally opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. There was also a document offering professional mentorship through one of Ethan's leadership programs. No gifts, no shortcuts, just an opportunity to keep building the future she had worked so hard to reach. 1 year later, life looked completely different. Emily had excelled in her new position. Her confidence had returned. The apartment that once felt filled with fear now felt like home. Noah had grown into a happy toddler whose laughter constantly filled every room. The difficult memories had not disappeared, but they no longer controlled her life. On a bright Saturday afternoon, Emily sat in a park watching Noah chase bubbles across the grass. Ethan stood nearby, laughing as Noah ran in circles around him. Their friendship had grown naturally over time, built on trust, built on respect, built on countless conversations that began with honesty. Emily watched them together and thought about how close she had come to giving up. One empty formula container, one desperate evening, one message sent to the wrong number. The entire course of her life had changed because of a mistake she once considered humiliating. Ethan walked over and sat beside her on the park bench. Noah continued chasing bubbles beneath the warm afternoon sun. For a moment, neither adult spoke. They simply watched him laugh. Then Emily smiled and shook her head. It is strange how life works sometimes. Ethan smiled back. Sometimes the things that look like mistakes become the beginning of something better. Emily looked toward her son, then toward the man who had entered her life through a single unexpected message. Deep inside, she knew he was right, because the text she never meant to send had led her to hope when she needed it most, and that hope changed everything.